Well, hey there, welcome to Mac TV. My name is Mac and I'm a leadership and team building coach, but specifically for first time team managers. So, in today's video, we're going to be talking all about communication, particularly communication skills for managers, because it is such an important skill. Not too long ago, I think it was like 3 years ago. So, yeah, 2017, 2018, there was a study done by Robert Half, and they found that one out of every three employees actually reported that their manager had poor communication skills. One out of three. That's a crazy and kind of a bad stat considering that communication is a fundamental skill of leadership and management. And so today I wanted to do a video about that, about effective communication and how you can improve your communication as a manager and a leader, because it is just so important. So I'm going to break it down into four important pillars of effective communication. Okay, so let's dive into this. So, the first pillar of communication is considering your audience. You see, when you're communicating, whether that be you with somebody else, so maybe you're in a one on one meeting or you're having a difficult conversation, or whether that be you with several people, so maybe you're communicating with a team of people, or maybe you're giving a presentation, either way, whenever you're communicating, you're always communicating with other people. And so, because it's an exchange of dialogue, like it's not just you and your words, it's always you and somebody else or several people that you're communicating with, you have to always remember to consider the people that you're talking to. So, how do you do that? You might be asking, how do you consider your audience in your communication? Well, I tend to work in frameworks because frameworks are awesome, right? It's a proven structure that helps you get to your desired outcome. And so, one of the frameworks that I love to follow when it comes to effective communication is the no feel do method, because it just works. It works, and it has definitely helped me to become that much more effective in speaking, whether that be one on one with somebody or to a group of people. And so let's dive into that framework for a second. So, when it comes to knowing, before you even speak, it's really important that you think through what your audience already knows and what they need to know, right? So, if the person you're speaking to or the group of people you're speaking to already have a wealth of knowledge on the topic that you're going to be considering, then it's not really necessary for you to douse them with a bunch of, gibberish or extra language, I should say, because they already know so much about it. So, what you need to do is get to the heart of the matter. But if they don't really know much about what you're going to be talking about, then it's really important that you color your language. And I don't mean in that way, but I mean, use as much examples as possible. Be specific when you're communicating. Make sure that you are helping them gather the full picture because of the fact that they don't really have that much background to what you're saying, right? So, the second part of that framework is, what is it that you want them to feel, right? Because you have to remember that information alone does not lead to action. It's emotion that leads to action. So, when it comes to someone taking action on what you're saying, you have to think of the corresponding emotion attached to that action so that you can use the words that fuels their emotion. And so, what I mean by this is, like, if you want a team member to walk away from a conversation with you feeling motivated and energized and empowered, you have to use the right body language and words so that they feel that way, so that they take that desired action that you're looking for. The third part of that framework is do. So, what is it that you want that person to do? If you don't clearly define what the next step is that they need to take, then they might just not take any steps because they don't think they need to, or they might take the wrong step because you haven't clearly articulated it. So you have to make sure that in your mind, you know specifically what that next action step is that you want them to take, and then clearly communicate that to them. So this is why I'm saying the no feel do framework is extremely effective. In fact, I had it on a sticky note on my desk. And every time, I was going into a one on one or whatever the case might be, I would just look at that sticky note real quick just to remind myself, no feel do, no feel do, no feel do. And it really helped me just to get my thoughts in order to make sure that I was being as effective as possible. So I want to recommend that to you as well. So, the second pillar to mastering effective communication is actually mastering your nonverbal communication. I really think we do ourselves a disservice by not paying enough attention to our nonverbal cues, which is crazy because, guys, it is one of the first things that speaks for us before we actually utter anything. And so, we really do need to pay attention to our nonverbal cues. My mom used to say, she used to say like that nonverbal communication is a lot like seasoning, right? It brings like flavor, it brings out flavor to the words you're saying so that it's that much more appealing. And she's absolutely right. Nonverbal communication really adds flavor to the words that you're saying. So you have to be extremely cognizant and aware of it. Let me give you an example of what I mean. Have you ever been like telling somebody a story and then like midway through the story you realize that they have like their arms crossed and you start getting really nervous because you're like, oh my goodness, this person thinks I'm boring or this person is not listening to me. And so your mind wanders and starts thinking about everything else other than the story. And then you start messing up the story. Well, this happens because, you know, subconsciously your mind is picking up on the cue that the person has their arms crossed, which is usually a cue of disinterest. And so you have to be just aware of the cues that you're sending off to people when they're communicating to you or when you're communicating to them because it is speaking for you. So practice, right? Practice the small things because these small things matter and they add up. Like I like to tell people, practice smiling and not just like smiling with your mouth, practice smiling with your entire face because it means something completely different. Make sure that you're using gestures. And like if you're speaking and you're talking about numbers or something, like use the corresponding number to your finger. If you're saying number one, go number one, number two, right? Like use your gestures to really just add flavor or seasoning, like we talked about, to what you're saying. These things are small, but these cues make a world of a difference in your communication. So the third pillar of effective communication is actually clarity. Now, I know I preach clarity all the time, but it's because I just think it's one of those like great things to have in your back pocket because it works every step of the way and in any situation. Like I am yet to find an aspect of life where clarity doesn't matter. You know, it just seems to matter in so many areas, and particularly when it comes to communication, because if you have something really important to say, but it's not clear, then it's going to fall on deaf ears. And who wants that? Who wants an important message to fall on deaf ears? We always want to be heard. And so it's important that what you're saying is clear, right? And let me just like dive a little bit deeper into this for a second. The human brain, guys, burns calories to process information. I can't remember how many calories it burns, but it does burn quite a bit to process information. And so oftentimes when we're communicating with people, we kick into kind of like survival mode because that's just who we are as human beings. We're always thinking about surviving, thriving, surviving, thriving. And so if I'm talking to you, let's say, and you're speaking to me in a non-clear manner, like I can't understand what you're saying, my survival mode will like automatically kick in and my brain will go, can't compute too much information. I can't understand and I can't decipher. So I'm going to shut down. That is literally what happens when you communicate with somebody and you're not doing it clearly. Their brain automatically shuts down because their brain is telling them you need to conserve this energy for something else, like if a tiger is coming off after you in the wild. You know what I mean? Like it's that same same concept. Our brain is always trying to protect us and it's always trying to conserve our energy. And so if you are not making an effort to be clear in your speaking, then that other person is not really going to hear you. This is why it's important that you always, always clarify what you are going to be speaking about. And which is why we started this process of you thinking through in a framework, the no feel do framework, because it helps you to kind of actually clarify your message. But I just want to reiterate it again that being clear when speaking is extremely important. And just to add to that clarity, like it's also good to like put your stuff in buckets, like as much structure as you can create when it comes to articulating something, the better. The more examples that you can give, the better. Just remember, people are having to burn calories to understand you. So it's really important that whatever you're saying is as clear as possible. Actually, in my new manager accelerator program, one of the things that I dive deep with my students is like a framework of clear communication, because I like to work in frameworks, like I said. And so what I've done is I've created for them a structure to ensure that whenever they're speaking to their team members or their colleagues, that it is always clear and concise, right? So whether that be having a feedback conversation, a difficult conversation, you're setting clear expectations, whatever the case might be, you can always follow this framework to ensure that you're being as clear as possible and that the information that you're giving or communicating is landing the exact way that you want it to. Because here's the thing about communication: you can't just throw it at the wall and expect it to stick. You have to be very intentional about it, especially since there's so many competing things competing for someone's brain space. And so, for you as a manager, if you want to be effective and have the performance results that you want from your team, then you kind of have to make sure that you're always clear, because otherwise you're fighting against biology, right? And biology says we shut down if what you're saying is not clear, which means you're not going to get the performance results you're looking for. And so if you want more information on the new Manager Accelerator program, then I highly suggest you head over to makitaandrews.com, because I got a lot of information on there for you about the Accelerator program. Besides, it is honestly the best program out there for first-time team leaders. So I highly suggest you check it out. Let's move on to the fourth pillar of effective communication, which is listening. You see, they reported that like 55% of our daily activity is spent listening. So that means we got to get really good at it. And I would argue that like good listening or actively listening is what separates like a good communicator maybe from an awesome communicator. In fact, I would bet, like, if you were to think of some of your like the people that you admire for their communication skills, I almost guarantee you they're really, really good listeners. And that's because like people that listen are able to, or people that actively listen are able to adapt, they're able to clarify and truly understand what you're saying before they actually speak. So they're like adjusting based on what you're saying rather than just speaking and it not making any sense. And so I do think it's very important that you improve your active listening skills. And one of the best ways that you can do that so that you become a more effective communicator is just by being present. I know that there's so many distractions, so many things that you're thinking of, but you got to clear your brain when someone is actually speaking to you and just focus on what they are saying. Get laser focused and try and like repeat what they say in bulk. So like in pieces, I mean. So if, if they said something to you, see if you can pick out just like a small phrase to repeat back, just so that you can show them as well that you're listening to what they're saying and it keeps you engaged in the conversation. So yeah, I would say the fourth pillar of effective communication is definitely listening. All right, so that is pretty much it for today's video on communication skills for managers. I hope that you found it valuable and that you're able to implement these 4 pillars of effective communication immediately. Thanks so much for watching this week's episode. I hope that you have a fantastic rest of the week. Do not forget to keep smiling, and I'll see you in the next one.